She had everything: the penthouse, the billionaire husband, the picture-perfect life that made strangers stop and stare with envy. Then she told him she was pregnant, and he vanished. 3 days later, she found him at a hotel, but he wasn't alone. The woman on his arm, laughing, glowing, with his hand protectively resting on her very pregnant belly, was the last person Maya ever expected to see. Her best friend. What happened next would destroy reputations, shatter a powerful family, and reveal a truth so shocking that it would make headlines across Miami. Because sometimes, the worst betrayals lead to the most unexpected victories. And sometimes, the DNA test everyone demands reveals something nobody saw coming. This is the story of a woman who lost everything and discovered that freedom is worth more than any penthouse view. A story of betrayal, survival, and a twist that changed 3 lives forever. Stay with me, because what you think you know about this story, you're wrong. The thing about perfect moments is that they always cast the longest shadows. Maya Brennan stood on the balcony of their Miami penthouse, watching the sun paint the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. Behind her, the party hummed with the carefully orchestrated energy of 200 guests celebrating 5 years of marriage. She had planned every detail herself: the champagne fountain, the string quartet, the orchids flown in from Hawaii. Everything had to be perfect because that was what Carter Hayes expected, and Maya had spent 5 years learning to meet those expectations. There you are. Carter's voice carried that particular warmth he reserved for public moments. His hand settled on her lower back, proprietary and familiar. You've outdone yourself, darling. Mother was just saying she's never seen the penthouse look more stunning. Maya turned, studying her husband's face. At 38, Carter Hayes was the kind of handsome that opened doors before he even knocked. Sharp jawline, perfectly styled dark hair touched with silver at the temples, and eyes that could make you feel like the only person in the room, or like you didn't exist at all, depending on his mood. I'm glad Gloria's pleased, Maya said, keeping her voice light. Carter's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and something flickered across his face. Not quite guilt, but close enough to make Maya's stomach tighten. I need to take this. Business. You understand? He was already walking away. The phone pressed to his ear. Maya did understand. She understood that business calls didn't usually make her husband smile like that. He's still at it. I see. Daniel Hayes appeared beside her, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Carter's younger brother had their father's height, but none of the family's calculated charm. He wore his architect's casual elegance like an apology, as if dressing well was something he'd been forced into. It's an important deal, Maya said automatically. It always is. Daniel handed her a glass, his eyes kind. You look tired. Maya, are you taking care of yourself? Before she could answer, Brooke Sullivan burst onto the balcony in a cloud of perfume and sequins. Maya's college roommate had transformed herself into a lifestyle influencer over the past few years, documenting her fabulous life for 300,000 followers who apparently cared deeply about her morning smoothie recipes and vacation wardrobes. There's my gorgeous girl. Brooke wrapped Maya in a hug that was slightly too tight, slightly too long. This party is absolutely insane. You're like the queen of Miami right now. Hardly, Maya laughed, but she felt herself relax slightly. Brooke had that effect. She was chaos and energy and unconditional support, or at least she had been for the past 10 years. Carter's so lucky to have you, Brooke continued, her eyes scanning the party behind them. Where is the man of the hour anyway? Phone call, Daniel said dryly. The mistress of his true love? Work? Brooke swatted his arm. Don't be dramatic. Carter's building an empire. That takes dedication. She turned to Maya, squeezing her hand. You two are literally relationship goals. I mean it. When I finally find my person, I want exactly what you have. Maya smiled and said all the right things. But later that night, after the guests had left and the caterers had cleaned up, she stood in their bedroom and watched Carter pack a bag. New York, she asked, though she'd heard him on the phone arranging the trip during the party. The Lexington deal is falling apart. I need to be there in person. He didn't look at her as he folded shirts with practiced efficiency. Maya took a breath. Now or never. Carter, I need to tell you something. Can it wait? My car's coming in 10 minutes. I'm pregnant. The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water. Carter's hand stopped moving. For a long moment, he stood frozen, a shirt dangling from his fingers. Then he turned, and his face was carefully blank. You're sure? I took 3 tests. I have an appointment with Dr. Morrison next week to confirm. But yes, I'm sure. Maya tried to read his expression and failed. Carter, this is good news. We've been trying for over a year. Right, yes, of course. He set the shirt down, ran a hand through his hair. That's, Maya, that's wonderful. I'm just surprised. The timing is complicated with the Lexington deal, but we'll figure it out. He crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. The embrace felt mechanical, his body stiff against hers. We should wait to tell people, he said into her hair. Just until after the first trimester. It's safer that way. For you. Okay, Maya whispered, but something cold had settled in her chest. Carter left 20 minutes later. He kissed her forehead and promised to call from New York. Maya stood at the window and watched his car disappear into Miami's glittering night. She should have felt happy, excited. Instead, she felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and dark, and the ground beneath her feet had just begun to crumble. 3 days of silence. Maya told herself it was normal. Carter was busy. The deal was complicated. He'd called once, briefly, his voice distracted and distant. Everything's fine here. How are you feeling? Good. I'll call you tomorrow. He hadn't. On day 4, Brooke showed up with coffee and pastries, letting herself in with the spare key Maya had given her years ago. Okay, what's wrong? Brooke settled onto the couch, tucking her legs beneath her. You texted me at 2 in the morning asking if I thought you were a good person? That's not normal Maya behavior. Maya wrapped her hands around the coffee cup, grateful for its warmth. Carter's been in New York for 4 days. I've barely heard from him. Men, Brooke sighed. They get tunnel vision when they're working. Remember sophomore year when I was dating that pre-med guy? He literally forgot my birthday because he had an exam. This is different. Maya hesitated. Then the words spilled out. I told him I was pregnant right before he left. He barely reacted. Brooke's eyes widened. Maya, oh my God, that's amazing. Why didn't you tell me immediately? She launched herself at Maya, hugging her fiercely. Then she pulled back, studying Maya's face. Wait, you don't look happy. What did Carter say exactly? He said it was wonderful. But Brooke, his face. He looked like I'd told him his company was being audited. He was probably just shocked. This is huge news. Some guys need time to process. Brooke squeezed her hand. Want me to do some reconnaissance I could call around? See if anyone's heard from him? Maybe he's been too swamped to check in properly. Relief washed through Maya. This was why she'd called Brooke. Her friend always knew how to help. Would you? I don't want to seem like I'm checking up on him, but say no more. I'm on it. Brooke stood, gathering her bag. You focus on taking care of yourself and that baby. I'll handle Operation Find Carter. After Brooke left, Maya tried to work. She had 3 events to plan, including a charity gala for Gloria Hayes' foundation, but her mind kept drifting to Carter's face when she told him about the pregnancy. That moment of blank shock before the mask had slipped into place. On day 5, Maya found the receipt. She wasn't snooping. She was gathering Carter's dry cleaning when a slip of paper fell from his jacket pocket. The Fontaine Hotel. Miami Beach. Room service for 2. Champagne. Chocolate-covered strawberries. The date was 3 days before their anniversary party. Not New York. Miami. Maya's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She called Carter. Voicemail. She called his office. His assistant, polished and professional, informed her that Mr. Hayes was in meetings all day and would return her call when available. She called Daniel. Maya, is everything okay? Where's the Lexington property, the deal Carter's working on? A pause. It's in Boston, not New York. Why Boston, not New York? Maya, what's going on? I have to go. She hung up before he could ask more questions. The Fontaine Hotel was a boutique property on South Beach, the kind of place that prided itself on discretion. Maya stood across the street, feeling ridiculous and desperate in equal measure. What was she doing? Carter had probably stayed there for a legitimate reason. Maybe he'd met a client. Maybe the hotel's brass door swung open. Carter walked out into the Miami sunshine, his hand on the small of a woman's back. They were laughing about something, heads close together in a way that spoke of intimacy and inside jokes. The woman was Brooke. Maya couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She watched them walk to Carter's car, watched him open the door for her with the same gallant gesture he'd once used for Maya. Watched Brooke tilt her head back, smiling up at him with her hand resting on her stomach in a gesture Maya recognized because she'd been doing it herself lately. Protective, unconscious. The way a pregnant woman touches her belly. Brooke was pregnant, and from the curve of her abdomen beneath her flowing dress, she was further along than Maya, at least 4 or 5 months. The world tilted sideways. Maya grabbed a parking meter to steady herself, her vision narrowing to a tunnel. She was going to be sick. She was going to scream. She was going to Carter's car pulled away from the curb, merging into traffic. Maya stood on the Miami sidewalk, her hand on her own barely there baby bump, and understood with perfect, terrible clarity that her marriage had been a lie, and her best friend had helped him write it. Michael Barrett's office smelled like old books and expensive coffee. The divorce attorney looked exactly like his website photo, 50-something, graying at the temples, with the world-weary eyes of someone who'd heard every variation of marital betrayal. "Walk me through it one more time," he said, legal pad covered in notes. Maya took a breath. 3 days since the hotel. 3 days of sleeping on the couch because she couldn't bear to be in their bedroom. 3 days of Carter's increasingly annoyed calls asking when she was going to stop this childish behavior and talk to him like an adult. "I'm 8 weeks pregnant. My husband has been having an affair with my best friend, who is approximately 5 months pregnant. He told me he was going to New York for business. He was actually in Miami with her. And you have proof of the affair." Maya slid her phone across the desk. "I took photos at the hotel. I have the receipt from the room, which I found in his jacket, and I have text messages between Brooke and me where she offered to check on him while he was supposedly in New York." Michael scrolled through the evidence, his expression neutral. "This is good. Concrete. Florida is a no-fault divorce state, so the affair itself doesn't impact the divorce settlement, but it does establish a pattern of deception that helps with custody arrangements and spousal support." "What about the pregnancy mine? I mean, the baby is entitled to child support regardless. If Carter tries to claim he's not the father, we'll do a paternity test." Michael looked up from the phone. "Have you told him you know about the affair?" "No, he doesn't know I saw them." "Good, don't tip your hand yet. Document everything. Save every text, every email, every financial record you can access. Do you have your own bank account?" "We have a joint account, but I have my old savings account from before we married. There's about $12,000 in it. Move it to a new bank today. Open accounts he doesn't know about." Michael made another note. "His family is wealthy. Old money, real estate, investments. Carter's personal net worth is somewhere around 40 million. Michael whistled softly. "Then he'll have excellent lawyers. We need to be strategic. Florida law requires equitable distribution of marital assets. That doesn't mean 50-50, but it means fair. You're entitled to a portion of everything acquired during the marriage." For the first time in 3 days, Maya felt something other than crushing despair. She felt powerful, armed. "What do I do now?" "We file first. Control the narrative." "And Maya?" Michael's expression softened slightly. "I've been doing this for 23 years. I've seen men like Carter Hayes before. They play to win, and they don't care who gets hurt. You need to be prepared for him to fight dirty. He already destroyed my marriage and stole my best friend. How much dirtier can it get?" Michael's silence was answer enough. Maya left the office feeling like she'd just suited up for war. She transferred her savings to a new account. She created a private email address and began forwarding documents. She opened a safe deposit box and stored copies of everything. Carter called that evening. "Maya, we need to talk. I'm coming home tomorrow." "Okay," she said, her voice neutral. "Are you still angry about the New York trip? I explained the deal was complicated." "We'll talk when you get home." She hung up before he could hear the tremor in her voice. That night, Daniel showed up at her door with Thai food and a 6-pack of ginger ale. "Brooke told me about the baby," he said carefully. "Congratulations." Maya stared at him. Brooke told you. She said you were overwhelmed and needed space, so she asked me to check on you. Daniel's expression shifted as he registered Maya's face. What's wrong? What am I missing? And suddenly Maya was crying, great heaving sobs that she'd been holding in for 3 days. Daniel set down the food and pulled her into his arms, letting her collapse against his chest. He's having an affair, she gasped out between sobs. With Brooke. She's pregnant. Daniel, she's 5 months pregnant. Daniel went very still. When he spoke, his voice was cold in a way Maya had never heard. Are you absolutely certain? She told him everything. The receipt, the hotel, the way they'd looked at each other. That son of a bitch, Daniel said quietly. That absolute son of a bitch. They sat on the floor of her penthouse, eating Thai food straight from the containers while Maya laid out her plan. File for divorce, demand her fair share, fight for custody of her baby. The judge will be reasonable. Right, Maya said. I have evidence of the affair. I'm the mother. Surely that counts for something. Daniel's expression was pained. Maya, you need to understand something about my family. We don't lose. Ever. When we go to war, we use every weapon available. Money, connections, reputation. My mother once destroyed a business partner who tried to undercut one of her deals. The man lost his company, his house, and his marriage. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to prepare you. Daniel took her hand. Carter will come at you with everything he has, and my mother will back him because family image is all that matters to her. They'll paint you as unstable, vindictive, anything they can use. So what do? You fight smarter, not harder. You document everything. You keep your emotions in check. And you remember that winning isn't always about the courtroom. Sometimes it's just about surviving. Maya looked at this man who was so different from his brother, Daniel, who'd chosen architecture over finance because he loved creating things instead of acquiring them. Daniel, who'd been quietly kind to her since the day Carter first brought her home to meet the family. Why are you helping me? She asked. Daniel smiled sadly. Because someone should have helped my sister-in-law before she married into this family. And because Carter's been getting away with this his whole life, it's about time someone called him on it. After Daniel left, Maya stood at the window overlooking the ocean. Tomorrow Carter would come home. Tomorrow the real battle would begin. She touched her stomach, feeling the tiny flutter of possibility beneath her palm. She had 8 months to prepare for single motherhood. 8 months to rebuild her life. 8 months to figure out how to protect her child from a father who saw people as assets to be acquired and managed. But first, she had to survive the war. Carter arrived home on a Tuesday morning, looking tanned and relaxed. He kissed Maya's cheek as if nothing was wrong, as if he hadn't been sleeping with her best friend for months. I missed you, he said, setting down his briefcase. How are you feeling? Any morning sickness? Maya forced herself to smile. A little nauseous in the mornings. Nothing terrible. Good, and that's good. He loosened his tie, glancing at his watch. I have a meeting at noon, but we should talk. About the baby. About our plans. I'd like that. They sat in the living room, the space suddenly feeling staged and unfamiliar. Carter leaned forward, his expression earnest and concerned. Maya, I know I haven't been as present as I should be. Building the company has consumed me, and that's not fair to you. He reached for her hand. But this baby changes everything. I want to be a better husband, more attentive. We should start looking at houses in Coral Gables. Better schools, more space for a family. He was good. Maya had to give him that. If she hadn't seen him with Brooke, she might have believed every word. That sounds wonderful, she said carefully. But Carter, we need to talk about something else. About us. His expression flickered, just for a second. What about us? Are you happy in this marriage? Of course I am. Maya, where is this coming from? She could have confronted him then, could have thrown the receipt in his face, screamed about Brooke, demanded the truth. But Michael Barrett's words echoed in her mind. Don't tip your hand. I just want to make sure we're on the same page, Maya said instead. Before the baby comes, I want us to be a team. We are a team. We've always been a team. Carter stood, checking his watch again. I really need to go. But tonight, let's have dinner. Just the two of us. We'll make plans for the future. He left, and Maya immediately called Michael Barrett. He's playing the devoted husband, she told the lawyer, acting like everything's perfect. That's actually good for us. It means he doesn't know you know. Keep playing along while we prepare the filing. I'll have the papers ready by the end of the week. But Carter wasn't as oblivious as Maya thought. 2 days later, she received an email from Michael Barrett marked urgent. She opened it to find a PDF of a legal filing. Carter had filed for divorce first, and the petition was brutal. He claimed Maya suffered from emotional instability and irrational behavior. He presented Ring doorbell footage from the night she discovered the affair, showing her returning home, pacing, crying, throwing pillows across the room in a moment of private anguish. His lawyers had edited it to make her look unhinged. He requested an emergency custody evaluation, citing concerns about her mental fitness to parent. He included statements from friends claiming Maya had been difficult and demanding lately, friends from their couple world, people she'd thought she knew. Maya read through the documents with shaking hands. This wasn't just a divorce filing. It was a character assassination. Her phone rang. Michael Barrett. He's playing dirty, exactly like I warned you. But Maya, we can fight this. The doorbell footage is taken out of context. Any reasonable person would be upset after discovering their husband's affair. Except I can't prove the affair without admitting I was following him. We'll establish it through other means. Hotel records, phone records, credit card statements. Discovery will reveal everything. When's the custody hearing? 2 weeks. Judge Morrison is fair but strict. We need to present you as stable, responsible, and focused on the baby's welfare. After hanging up, Maya sat in the silent penthouse and felt the walls closing in. This was the power of the Hayes family money. They could reshape reality, turn victim into villain, make lies look like truth. Her phone buzzed. Brooke. Hey, babe. I heard about the divorce. Are you okay? Want me to come over? The audacity of it stole Maya's breath. Brooke knew about the filing before Maya had even received the papers, which meant she was getting information from Carter, which meant they were still together, still planning, still betraying her. Maya didn't respond. Instead, she called Daniel. I need your help, she said when he answered. I need you to testify about Carter's character, about the kind of man he really is. A long pause. Maya, if I do that, my family will destroy me. My mother controls my trust fund. It's my only income until my architecture firm becomes profitable. I know what I'm asking, but Daniel, he's trying to take my baby. He's making me look insane. I need someone who knows the truth about what he's capable of. She heard Daniel breathing on the other end of the line, heard the weight of the decision settling on him. Give me 24 hours, and he finally said, let me think about this. That night, Maya got a call from her largest client, a tech company whose annual conference she'd been planning for 6 months. We're going in a different direction, the CEO's assistant said, her voice apologetic but firm. We appreciate your work, but we've decided to use an internal team. 3 more clients called over the next 2 days, all of them canceling, all of them vague about the reasons. Someone was systematically destroying her business. Maya checked her bank account and found the joint account was frozen. Carter's lawyers had gotten a court order, claiming they needed to preserve marital assets during the divorce proceedings. She had $12,000 in her private account, no income, a baby on the way, and a custody battle that would cost tens of thousands in legal fees. This was what Daniel had warned her about. The Hayes family didn't just win, they obliterated anyone who stood against them. Maya stood in the apartment she could no longer afford, surrounded by the wreckage of her life, and felt the first real stirring of fear. Not for herself, for the baby growing inside her, the child who would be born into a war zone, claimed by a father who saw him as just another asset to control. Her phone rang. Daniel. I'll testify, he said without preamble. I'll tell the judge exactly what kind of man my brother is. And Maya. Whatever happens after that, whatever my family does to me, it'll be worth it. Some things are more important than money. For the first time in days, Maya felt something shift. She wasn't alone in this fight. She had an ally, a witness, someone who understood exactly what she was up against. It wasn't much, but it was something. And sometimes, something was enough to keep fighting. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in early October. Maya woke at dawn, her hands trembling as she tried to apply makeup that would make her look stable and responsible, instead of like a woman who'd been crying herself to sleep every night for 3 weeks. She was 12 weeks pregnant now, just starting to show. Dr. Morrison had confirmed the baby was healthy, growing right on schedule. The same doctor would be testifying today about Maya's mental state and fitness as a mother. Michael Barrett had prepared her thoroughly. Answer questions directly. Don't get emotional. Don't engage with Carter's lawyer's provocations. Present yourself as calm, rational, and focused on the baby's welfare. The courtroom was smaller than Maya expected, paneled in dark wood that absorbed light and hope in equal measure. Carter sat at the opposing table with 3 lawyers, all of them in identical Navy suits that probably cost more than Maya's monthly rent. He didn't look at her. Judge Patricia Morrison entered, a severe woman in her 60s with iron gray hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every variation of human ugliness. "This is a preliminary custody hearing," she began. "Mr. Hayes has petitioned for a psychological evaluation of his wife before their child is born, citing concerns about her mental fitness to parent. Mr. Hayes, your counsel may proceed." Carter's lead attorney, a shark-eyed man named Robert Westbrook, stood. "Your Honor, we've documented several incidents that demonstrate Mrs. Hayes' concerning emotional instability." He presented the doorbell footage. On the courtroom screen, Maya looked genuinely unhinged, pacing and crying and throwing things. The footage was silent, stripping away context. You couldn't hear her phone conversation with Brooke. Couldn't hear her discovering Carter's betrayal. Couldn't hear anything except her own visible distress. "This was filmed 3 weeks ago," Westbrook continued. "Mr. Hayes returned home to find his wife in this state. She refused to explain her behavior or seek help." "That's not true," Maya whispered to Michael Barrett. "Save it for your testimony," he whispered back. Westbrook called character witnesses, a couple from their social circle who testified that Maya had become increasingly erratic and withdrawn, a former client who claimed Maya had been unreliable and difficult to work with. All of them were lying, or at least shading the truth until it became unrecognizable. Then Westbrook played his trump card. "Your Honor, we'd like to present testimony from someone who knows Mrs. Hayes intimately, someone who's been concerned about her welfare for months." Brooke Sullivan walked into the courtroom. Maya actually felt her heart stop. She grabbed the table edge, her vision tunneling. Brooke took the stand, looking perfect in a demure dress that somehow managed to hide her pregnancy. She didn't look at Maya. "Miss Sullivan, how long have you known the defendant?" 10 years. We were college roommates, best friends." "And you've observed her behavior recently?" "Yes." Brooke's voice was soft, regretful. "I'm worried about her. She's been paranoid, accusatory. She called me at 2 in the morning a few weeks ago, asking bizarre questions about whether I thought she was a good person. I think the pregnancy hormones are affecting her mental state." Maya stood up without meaning to. "You're lying. You, Mrs. Hayes." "Sit down," Judge Morrison said sharply. Michael Barrett pulled Maya back into her chair, his grip tight on her arm. "Not now. Let me handle this." But the damage was done. Maya's outburst had made her look exactly as unstable as they'd claimed. When Michael Barrett finally got to cross-examine Brooke, he was gentle but thorough. "Miss Sullivan, when did you last speak to Mr. Hayes?" I'm not sure. A few weeks ago. Maybe not this morning before court." Brooke's hesitation was answer enough. "We may have exchanged texts." "What was the nature of those texts?" "Just checking in." He wanted to know how Maya was doing. "How thoughtful." Michael's tone was dry. "Miss Sullivan, are you aware that Mr. Hayes has been staying at the Fontaine Hotel for the past month?" "I don't know where he's staying, really, because hotel records show that a Brooke Sullivan has visited the Fontaine 17 times in the past 6 weeks, with several overnight stays." The courtroom went very quiet. Brooke's face drained of color. Those records are private. Actually, they're discoverable in divorce proceedings, particularly when infidelity might impact custody arrangements." Michael approached the stand. "Miss Sullivan, are you currently in a romantic relationship with Mr. Hayes?" "I don't have to answer that." Your Honor, the witness's relationship with my client's husband is directly relevant to her credibility. Judge Morrison nodded. Answer the question. Miss Sullivan. Brooks' mouth opened, closed. Yes, Carter and I are together. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Carter's lawyers had a whispered conference, and Maya felt something crack open in her chest. Not pain this time, but a cold, clarifying rage. How long has this relationship been going on? Michael asked. 6 months. And you're currently pregnant? Yes. With Mr. Hayes's child? Yes. Michael let that sit for a moment. So to be clear, you've been having an affair with your best friend's husband while she's been trying to conceive? You hid this relationship while offering to help her through her own pregnancy. And now you're testifying that she's unstable. I'm concerned about her, Brooks said, but her voice had lost all conviction. I'm sure you are, Michael said dryly. No further questions. The rest of the hearing was a blur. Dr. Morrison testified that Maya was physically and mentally healthy. Daniel took the stand and calmly, methodically detailed his brother's pattern of manipulation and control. Carter doesn't see people as people, Daniel said. He sees them as assets, resources to be managed. I've watched him discard business partners, friends, anyone who stopped being useful. I'm terrified of what he'll do to that child if he sees parenting as just another transaction. Carter's lawyers tried to paint Daniel as a jealous brother with an axe to grind, but Daniel's quiet sincerity was more powerful than their bluster. Judge Morrison called a recess. I'll render my decision after lunch. Maya sat in the hallway with Michael and Daniel, too nauseous to eat. That went better than expected, Michael said. Brooks' testimony backfired spectacularly. And Daniel, you were excellent. What happens now? Maya asked. The judge will either order the psych evaluation or deny it. If she denies it, we've won this round. Carter won't have grounds to challenge custody before the baby's born. They waited. 2 hours. 3. Maya counted the tiles on the floor, counted her breaths, counted the days until her baby would be born into this mess. Finally, the bailiff called them back. Judge Morrison looked at both parties with equal disdain. I've reviewed the evidence and testimony. Mr. Westbrook, your case relies heavily on selective editing and testimony from a witness with a clear conflict of interest. Dr. Morrison's evaluation shows no signs of mental instability. Mr. Hayes's petition is denied. Maya sagged with relief. She'd won. She'd actually won. However, the judge continued, her voice hardening, I'm troubled by the level of animosity between these parties. Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes, you're about to become parents. That child deserves better than to be a weapon in your war. I'm ordering both of you to parenting mediation and strongly suggest you resolve this divorce with less hostility. Outside the courthouse, Maya finally let herself cry. Daniel hugged her while Michael discussed next steps. This is good, the lawyer said. We're in a much stronger position now. Carter's credibility is shot. His affairs on the record. We can push for a favorable settlement. Maya's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You think you won. You have no idea what you started. I will destroy you for this. She showed it to Michael. Document it, he said grimly. Carter's unraveling. That makes him dangerous. Maya drove home to her small apartment, the one she'd rented after being forced out of the penthouse. It was cramped and the air conditioning didn't work properly, but it was hers. She made herself tea and sat by the window, watching Miami's sunset paint the sky. She'd survived today. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she'd take the small victory. Her phone rang. Daniel. My mother called, he said without preamble. I'm officially disowned. She's cutting off my trust fund, blacklisting me with every architecture firm in Miami. Apparently testifying against Carter is unforgivable. Daniel, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to lose everything. I haven't lost everything, he said softly. I've just lost the things that didn't matter. Maya, can I come over? I don't want to be alone right now. Of course. He arrived an hour later with Chinese food and a bottle of non-alcoholic wine. They sat on her tiny balcony and didn't talk about the hearing or the divorce or his shattered relationship with his family. Instead, they talked about architecture and art and the kind of life they wish they could build. And for a few hours, Maya forgot about the war, Forgot about Carter and Brooke and the betrayal. She just existed in this moment with someone who'd chosen truth over comfort, who'd sacrificed everything to stand beside her when it mattered. When Daniel left that night, he hugged her goodbye at the door, and maybe it was the stress or the loneliness or the gratitude, but Maya found herself holding on longer than necessary. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder, "for everything." "You don't have to thank me," he said. "You'd do the same." After he left, Maya realized something that should have terrified her, but somehow didn't. She was falling in love with her husband's brother. Winter came to Miami in its half-hearted way, just cool enough to pretend it was a real season. Maya's pregnancy progressed with relentless biological precision. 16 weeks, 20 weeks, 24 weeks. Each ultrasound brought new developments and new fears. She was having a boy, a son who would be born into a custody battle that showed no signs of ending. Carter's lawyers had pivoted after the failed custody challenge. Now they were delaying everything, filing motion after motion, dragging out the divorce proceedings. It was a war of attrition. They had unlimited resources. Maya was burning through her savings at a terrifying rate. "He's trying to bankrupt you," Michael Barrett explained during one of their increasingly frequent meetings. "If you can't afford to fight, you'll have to accept whatever settlement he offers. So what do I do? You survive, you adapt, and you remember that this isn't about winning everything. It's about protecting that baby and getting enough resources to build a life." Maya had started taking freelance event planning jobs, smaller gigs that paid far less than her old clients. But bills were bills, and babies were expensive. She'd converted her second bedroom into a nursery, painting the walls a soft gray-blue herself because she couldn't afford contractors. Daniel came over most weekends to help. He was surprisingly handy, assembling the crib and changing table with the focused intensity he brought to everything. His architecture firm was struggling after his mother's blacklisting, but he was surviving on small residential projects. They'd fallen into an easy domestic rhythm that Maya tried very hard not to examine too closely. He'd bring lunch, they'd work on the nursery, sometimes he'd stay for dinner. They'd talk about everything except the elephant in the room, the growing connection between them. "You don't have to keep helping me," Maya said one Saturday as they hung curtains. "I'm sure you have better things to do." "There's nowhere I'd rather be." Daniel smiled at her, and something in Maya's chest tightened. The problem was that she believed him. In February, when Maya was 7 months pregnant and huge and uncomfortable, Carter's lawyers filed a new motion. They wanted to delay the custody hearing until after the baby was born, then seek immediate 50-50 custody. "They're trying to establish his parental rights from day one," Michael explained. "Make it harder for you to argue he wasn't involved." "But he hasn't been involved. He hasn't asked about the pregnancy once." "Doesn't matter. In Florida, unmarried fathers have the same rights as mothers once paternity is established. He can petition for overnight visits from birth." The thought of handing her newborn son over to Carter, even for a few hours, had made Maya physically ill. "What if we proved he was unfit? Unless you can show he's actively dangerous. That's a tough standard to meet. Rich and narcissistic isn't enough, unfortunately." Maya left that meeting and drove aimlessly, ending up at the beach. She walked along the shore until her swollen feet ached, trying to imagine a future where this endless battle finally ended. Her phone rang, an unknown number. "Hello, Maya." The voice was small, ashamed. "Brooke." Maya almost hung up. Should have hung up, but something made her answer. "What do you want?" "I'm sorry. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I'm so sorry. Carter, he's not who I thought he was. He promised me we'd be a family. But now that you're fighting back, he's just angry all the time. He's not interested in being a father. Not to my daughter, not to your son. He just wants to win." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should know. He's planning something. I heard him on the phone with his lawyers. They're going to demand a paternity test the second the baby is born. They want to establish his rights immediately, before you can recover from delivery." "Of course they do." "Maya, I betrayed you. I destroyed our friendship for a man who sees both of us as possessions. I can't take that back. But I can warn you, whatever he's planning, it's going to be worse than you expect." Brooke hung up before Maya could respond. That night, Daniel came over with dinner and found Maya crying at the kitchen table. What happened? He was at her side immediately, his hand on her back. Maya told him about Brooke's call, about Carter's plans, about the growing certainty that she was fighting a battle she couldn't win. I'm so tired. Daniel, I'm 7 months pregnant. I can barely afford rent, and I'm fighting a man who has infinite resources. What if I can't protect my baby? What if the judge decides Carter deserves 50-50 custody, and I have to hand over my newborn son like he's a piece of property? Then we fight harder, Daniel said fiercely. Maya, look at me. You're not alone in this. I know I'm not the baby's father. I know our relationship started in the worst possible circumstances, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And whatever happens, we face it together. The intensity in his voice made something click into place. This wasn't just friendship or gratitude. This was something deeper, something that had been building for months. Daniel, Maya started, but he was already backing away. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. You're dealing with enough without me adding complications? Wait. Maya stood, awkward with her pregnant belly. Don't apologize. Don't act like you're a complication. You're the only thing keeping me sane. They stared at each other across her small kitchen. The air felt charged, dangerous. We can't, Daniel said quietly. Not while you're still married to my brother. Not while you're pregnant with his child. It would give his lawyers everything they need to destroy you. I know, Maya's voice broke. I know we can't. But Daniel, I need you to know that if circumstances were different. I know, he interrupted gently. I know, Maya, and that's enough for now. He left soon after, and Maya sat in her nursery, surrounded by soft toys and tiny clothes, and let herself imagine a different life. One where she'd met Daniel first, where they'd built something together without the shadow of betrayal and legal battles. But that wasn't reality. Reality was Carter's lawyers and mounting debt, and the knowledge that in 2 months, she'd give birth to a son who would be claimed by a father who saw him as leverage. The next morning, Maya woke to cramps, low, persistent aching that made her call Dr. Morrison's office. Come in immediately, the nurse said. Better safe than sorry. At the hospital, hooked up to monitors, Maya watched her baby's heartbeat flicker across the screen, strong and steady. The doctor examined her and frowned. Your blood pressure is elevated, stress-related, most likely. Maya, you need to take it easy. The last 2 months of pregnancy are crucial. Too much stress can trigger early labor. I can't stop the divorce proceedings. I understand, but you need to find ways to manage the stress. Rest. Delegate. Ask for help. This baby's health depends on it. Maya nodded, but she was thinking about mounting legal bills in Carter's relentless campaign and the impossibility of relaxing when your entire world was under siege. Dr. Morrison must have read her mind. I'm going to recommend bed rest for the next 2 weeks. Give your body a chance to calm down. I'll write a letter for your lawyer. Sometimes judges respond better to medical necessity than emotional pleas. For 2 weeks, Maya stayed in bed. Daniel came over every day, working remotely from her couch, bringing meals, keeping her company. They watched terrible reality TV and didn't talk about anything important. It was the closest thing to peace Maya had felt in months. On the last day of bed rest, Daniel fell asleep on her couch, his laptop still open. Maya watched him sleep. This man who'd sacrificed his family and his career to stand beside her. This man who'd become her best friend and maybe something more. She touched her belly, feeling her son kick beneath her palm. 2 more months, just 2 more months until he was born, until the real battle began. I'll protect you, she whispered to her baby. Whatever it takes, I promise. Maya went into labor on a Tuesday night in late March. Not the dramatic water-breaking scene from movies, just a slow build of contractions that went from uncomfortable to impossible over the course of 6 hours. She called Daniel at midnight. It's time. He was at her apartment in 15 minutes, finding her in the bathroom, gripping the sink and breathing through a contraction. Okay, he said, remarkably calm. Hospital bag is by the door. Yes, Daniel, I'm scared. I know. But you're the strongest person I've ever met. You're going to be amazing. The labor was long and exhausting. Maya had planned for a natural birth, But after 14 hours, the pain became too much. She accepted the epidural gratefully, finally able to rest between contractions. Daniel never left her side. He held her hand, wiped her face with cool cloths, told her terrible jokes to distract her. When the nurses changed shift, they assumed he was the father. Neither of them corrected the assumption. At 4:17 in the morning, after 18 hours of labor, Jackson Carter Brennan entered the world. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, a shock of dark hair and lungs that announced his arrival with impressive volume. The nurse placed him on Maya's chest, and the world stopped. Everything that had come before the betrayal, the divorce, the endless legal battles, all of it dissolved in the face of this tiny, perfect human. "Hello, my love," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm your mama. I've been waiting so long to meet you." Jackson's eyes opened, dark blue and unfocused, searching. Maya touched his tiny fingers, marveling at the perfection of his miniature fingernails. "He's beautiful," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. He was crying too, Maya realized. "Maya, he's perfect." For one shining moment, everything was perfect. Then the door opened. Carter walked in, flanked by 2 lawyers and a hospital administrator, looking deeply uncomfortable. Behind them, Brooke hovered, holding a 2-week-old baby girl. "Mr. Hayes, I must insist you wait for visiting hours," the administrator said. "I'm the father. I have every legal right to be here." Carter's eyes found Jackson, and something crossed his face. Not love or wonder. Calculation. "Get out," Maya said, her arms tightening around her son. "I'm here to meet my son." Carter approached the bed. "And to ensure that paternity is properly established. My lawyers have a court order for an immediate DNA test." "You can't be serious." Daniel stepped between Carter and the bed. "She just gave birth. You're seriously going to do this now. The sooner paternity is established, the sooner we can arrange custody. I've already filed for 50-50 physical custody starting at 6 weeks. Florida law states—" "I know what the law states," Maya interrupted, her voice shaking. "You want a paternity test? Fine, let's do it. Let's settle this right now." She looked at Daniel as she said it, saw the confusion in his eyes, then the dawning horror as he understood what she was really saying. "Maya, no, don't." "It's okay," she said quietly. "It's time." The hospital administrator called for a tech. Within minutes, a nervous young woman arrived with swab kits. "This is highly irregular," she kept saying. "Normally we require appointments, proper consent forms." "Everyone here consents," Carter said impatiently. "Just do it." "Oh." The tech swabbed Jackson's cheek so gently that he barely stirred. Then she approached Carter, who opened his mouth immediately, confident and smug. "Results will be available in 3 to 5 business days," the tech said. "We'll send them to both parties' attorneys." "Not acceptable." Carter pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the lab directly. I want priority processing. Money is no object." "Sir, that's not how. Make it happen." After Carter left, taking his lawyers and his threats with him, Maya sat in the hospital bed holding Jackson and feeling the weight of what she'd just set in motion. Daniel sat beside her, his face pale. "Maya, why didn't you tell me you suspected?" "Because I didn't know. Not for sure. I couldn't let myself hope." She looked at him, this man who'd become her anchor. "That night in January, when I found out about the affair and you came over, we both had too much wine. I was so broken, and you were so kind, and we slept together." Daniel finished quietly. "Once, we both regretted it immediately. I moved to Atlanta the next week because I couldn't stand the guilt. I convinced myself the baby was Carter's. I was still sleeping with him that week. I told myself the dates didn't line up right. But Daniel, when I look at Jackson, I see you. The shape of his eyes, the way he holds his mouth." They sat in silence, watching Jackson sleep. "If I'm his father," Daniel said slowly, "if the test comes back positive, everything changes. Everything's already changed. But yes, if you're his father, Carter has no claim, no custody rights, no legal standing. He'll be humiliated, publicly destroyed. Maya, he'll come after both of us with everything he has. I know. Daniel reached out, touching Jackson's tiny hand with one finger. The baby's fist closed around it instinctively. I never dared to hope, he whispered. All these months, helping you prepare. I told myself I was just being supportive. But Maya, every time I thought about this baby, I wondered, what if, and if the test says Carter's the father, then I'll love Jackson anyway, the way I've been planning to love him all along. Biology doesn't make a father. Showing up makes a father. Maya closed her eyes, exhausted beyond measure. 3 to 5 business days. That's how long they had to wait. 3 to 5 days before the truth was revealed and the real battle began. That night, after Daniel left to go home and shower, Maya lay in the hospital bed with Jackson sleeping on her chest. She breathed in his new baby smell and tried not to think about the storm that was coming. She'd made her choice, put all her cards on the table, gambled everything on a truth she could barely let herself believe. In 3 to 5 days, she'd know if the gamble had paid off, or if she just handed Carter the ultimate weapon to destroy them all. The days after bringing Jackson home were a blur of sleeplessness and wonder. Maya had read all the parenting books, attended all the classes, but nothing prepared her for the reality of a newborn. The constant feeding, the endless diaper changes, the way Jackson's cries could penetrate straight through exhaustion to trigger some primal maternal response. Daniel came over every morning before work and every evening after. He was shockingly competent with the baby, changing diapers with the same focused precision he brought to architectural drawings. He'd researched swaddling techniques and learned to distinguish between Jackson's different cries. That's his hungry cry, he'd say, different pitch than his tired cry. How do you know this? I read Dr. Karp's book, also like 6 parenting blogs. He grinned, sheepish. I wanted to be useful. They didn't talk about the paternity test. The results were due any day now, and the waiting felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, not knowing if solid ground or empty air lay ahead. On day 4, Carter's lawyers filed a motion demanding immediate access to the results. Michael Barrett filed a counter-motion arguing that Carter had no standing until paternity was confirmed. The legal maneuvering continued, even as the actual question remained unanswered. He's panicking, Michael said during a phone call. Confident men don't push this hard. Somewhere in his mind, Carter's realized this might not go his way. On day 5, Brooke showed up at Maya's apartment. Maya answered the door with Jackson in her arms, too tired to even be angry at the sight of her former best friend. I can't stay, Brooke said quickly. Carter doesn't know I'm here, but I had to tell you. He got the results this morning. The lab sent them to his lawyer first, and Brooke's eyes were red from crying. He's not the father, Maya. The test came back 0% match. He's been screaming on the phone with his lawyers all morning, accusing everyone of tampering with the results. He's demanding a second test, threatening to sue the lab. The world tilted. Maya gripped the doorframe, her knees suddenly weak. Are you okay? Brooke reached out instinctively, then stopped herself. I need to call Michael and Daniel. I need... Maya couldn't finish the sentence. Relief and terror were warring in her chest. There's more, Brooke said quietly. Carter knows about you and Daniel. He hired a private investigator months ago. He has photos of Daniel at your apartment, helping with the nursery, sleeping on your couch. He's going to use it to claim you had an affair during the marriage. We didn't. Not then. I know. But Maya, he's going to make it look like you did. He's going to paint you as the cheater, make himself the victim. And if Daniel is the father... Brooke trailed off, but the implication was clear. The public would crucify them. The betrayed husband's brother, sleeping with his pregnant wife. It didn't matter that the timeline didn't support it. The narrative was too perfect, too scandalous. People would believe it because they wanted to believe it. Why are you telling me this? Maya asked. Because I owe you, and because Carter showed me who he really is. He doesn't want to be a father. Maya, he just wanted to win. When he found out the baby wasn't his, the first thing he said was, good, now I don't have to deal with custody. No sadness, no disappointment, just relief that he didn't have to pretend to care anymore. After Brooke left, Maya called Daniel. The results are in. You're Jackson's father. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Daniel, I'm coming over. Don't do anything. Don't call anyone. Just wait for me. He arrived 20 minutes later, his face a mixture of shock and something Maya couldn't quite read. He walked straight to where Jackson lay in his bassinet, sleeping peacefully. For a long moment, Daniel just stared at his son. Then he reached down, picking up the baby with infinite gentleness, cradling him against his chest. "Hi," he whispered to Jackson. "I'm your dad. I didn't know, but I'm here now. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Maya started crying, happy tears this time, for the first time in months. Daniel sat on the couch, still holding Jackson, and looked at Maya with eyes full of wonder and fear. "What do we do now?" "We get a second test," Maya said practically. "Carter's going to demand it anyway. We need ironclad proof that removes all doubt. And then we face whatever comes next, together." Michael Barrett arranged for an independent lab to run a second paternity test, this time with witnesses present to ensure chain of custody. The results came back 48 hours later. Daniel Hayes, biological father, 99.97% certainty. Carter's world imploded. The news leaked somehow. Maybe one of the lawyers talked, or maybe the lab tech recognized the Hayes name. But within days, Miami's social circle was buzzing with the scandal. The city's golden boy, cuckolded by his own brother. The perfect marriage revealed as a sham. The baby that wasn't his. Carter tried to spin it, claiming Maya had seduced Daniel during the marriage, painting himself as the victim of a calculated affair. But the timeline didn't support it. Maya's pregnancy began before Daniel had even moved back to Miami. And slowly, carefully, Michael Barrett began leaking the real story. The hotel receipts showing Carter's affair, Brooke's pregnancy, which predated Maya's by months, the systematic campaign to destroy Maya's business and reputation. Public opinion shifted. Carter wasn't the victim. He was the villain who'd gotten exactly what he deserved, but Maya knew better than to celebrate. Men like Carter didn't accept defeat. They got revenge. On Jackson's 6-week birthday, Maya's lawyer called with news. "Carter's dropping all custody claims. He's offering a generous divorce settlement if you'll sign a non-disclosure agreement about the affair." "How generous? $2 million plus the penthouse, plus a trust fund for Jackson's education? In exchange, you never speak publicly about any of this. No interviews, no social media, no tell-all books." Maya looked at Jackson, sleeping in Daniel's arms while Daniel worked on his laptop one-handed. "I'll sign," she said. "I don't want Carter's money for revenge. I want it so Jackson never has to worry about college or medical bills or anything else. And I want this to be over." "Smart choice. I'll draw up the papers." A week later, Maya signed away her right to tell her story in exchange for her son's financial security. She signed away the penthouse and the life she'd built there. She signed away any claim to Carter's empire, and she felt nothing but relief. 6 months after Jackson's birth, Maya stood in the small house Daniel had found in Coconut Grove. It wasn't the penthouse. It had 3 bedrooms, a manageable mortgage, and a backyard just big enough for Jackson to play in someday. It was home. Daniel had moved in officially last month, after they'd been to couples counseling for 3 months. The therapist had been clear they needed to deal with the messy foundation of their relationship before building anything lasting. "You're not in love with an idea of each other," Dr. Sanders had said. "You know each other's worst moments. You've been through genuine trauma together. That's actually a stronger foundation than most couples have. But you need to be honest about the complications." The complications were real. Daniel's family had completely disowned him. His mother wouldn't take his calls. Carter had successfully poisoned most of Daniel's professional relationships. The architecture firm was barely surviving, but Daniel seemed happier than Maya had ever seen him. He'd started teaching at the university, introduction to design classes that paid poorly but filled him with purpose. He came home smelling like chalk and coffee, full of stories about his students' projects. And with Jackson, he was transformed. The cautious, careful man Maya had first known disappeared around his son. Daniel did silly voices during diaper changes, spent hours on the floor doing tummy time, read board books with the same dramatic flair he'd once reserved for design presentations. "I think he said dada today," Daniel announced one evening, bursting through the door. "I know the pediatrician said it's too early, but I swear he looked right at me and said dada." "He's 7 months old. It was probably gas." It was not gas. My son is a genius. Tell her, Jackson. Tell Mama you said dada. Jackson blew a raspberry and grabbed Daniel's nose. Maya's event planning business had rebuilt slowly. She'd lost all the high-profile clients, but she'd found a new niche, small, meaningful events for people who couldn't afford the big companies, proposals, baby showers, memorial services, events that mattered more than they impressed. She made less money, but she felt better about the work. One evening in October, as they sat on the back porch watching Jackson explore grass for the first time, Daniel said, I want to make this official. We're living together, raising a child together. How much more official can it get? I want to marry you, Maya, not because of Jackson, not because of the scandal, but because I love you. Because I want to build a life with you that's ours, not defined by Carter or the past, just us, starting fresh. Maya looked at him, this man who'd sacrificed everything to stand beside her, who'd loved her son before he knew the baby was his, who'd chosen truth over comfort every single time it mattered. Yes, she said simply, but let's wait until the divorce is finalized. I want to marry you as Maya Brennan, not as Carter's almost ex-wife. They were married 6 months later in a ceremony so small it barely qualified as a wedding. Just them. Jackson, Michael Barrett as witness, and a judge who'd seen enough messy divorces to appreciate a happy ending. Maya wore a simple white dress. Daniel cried during his vows. Jackson threw up on both of them during the photos. It was perfect. That night, after Jackson was asleep and they were finally alone, Daniel pulled Maya close. Do you ever regret how we started? He asked. All the mess and scandal and pain. Maya thought about it honestly. About the woman she'd been in the penthouse, planning perfect parties and ignoring the cracks in her marriage. About the betrayal that had shattered her world. About the long, hard fight to rebuild something real from the wreckage. No, she said finally, because that pain led me here, to you, to Jackson, to this life. I wouldn't change a single moment because it all brought me home. Daniel kissed her, slow and sweet, and Maya felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace, not the absence of problems. They still struggled with money. Daniel's family was still a wound that might never heal. Maya still had nightmares sometimes about the custody battle, but they were building something real, something that wasn't perfect or polished or designed to impress anyone. They were just a family, figuring it out together. Jackson's first birthday party was nothing like the extravagant affairs Maya used to plan. No hired entertainment, no designer decorations, no guest list of influential people who didn't actually care about her. Just their living room, filled with Daniel's colleagues from the university, a few of Maya's new clients who'd become friends, and Michael Barrett, who'd become something like family. Maya had made the cake herself, a slightly lopsided construction that Jackson would probably just smash anyway. Daniel had blown up balloons until he got lightheaded. Jackson wore a onesie that said, 1 year of awesome, and had frosting in his hair before the party even started. It was chaos. It was beautiful. It was theirs. Halfway through the party, the doorbell rang. Maya answered it to find Brooke standing on the porch, holding her daughter. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two women who'd once shared everything, now strangers connected only by trauma. I know I'm not invited, Brooke said quickly. And I know I have no right to be here. But I wanted to bring this. She held out a wrapped package. For Jackson. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. I destroyed our friendship for a man who didn't care about either of us. I can't take that back. But I hope someday you'll believe that I regret it every single day. Maya took the package. Come in. What? It's Jackson's birthday, and your daughter is his half-sister. Even if Carter refuses to acknowledge it, they should know each other. Maya stepped back from the door. I'm not ready to forgive you. Maybe I never will be. But they're children. They don't deserve to pay for our mistakes. Brooke's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Inside, the party continued. Brooke kept to the edges, quiet and careful. She watched Jackson devour his cake, watched Daniel lift him high and make him squeal with laughter. She watched the family they'd become despite everything, and when she left an hour later, she hugged Maya at the door. You got the good brother, she whispered. I hope you know how lucky you are. I do, Maya said. Every single day. After everyone left and Jackson was finally asleep, exhausted from his big day, Maya and Daniel collapsed on the couch. 1 year, Daniel said, pulling Maya against his side. A year ago, we were waiting for those test results, terrified of what came next. And now we're here, exactly where we're supposed to be. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, then opened it out of habit. It was a photo, Carter, standing in front of a new development project, arm around a woman Maya didn't recognize. The caption read, Hayes Properties breaks ground on luxury tower. He'd moved on, built a new empire, found a new trophy girlfriend, erased Maya and Jackson from his narrative entirely. Maya showed Daniel the photo. He's pretending we never existed. Good, Daniel said firmly. Let him pretend. Let him build his towers and his image. We don't need his acknowledgement. We have something better. We have truth. Maya looked around their small living room, at the toy-strewn floor and the photos on the wall, and the life they'd built from honesty and hard work. No penthouse views, no society galas, no carefully curated perfection, just real life, messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, standing in that courtroom, terrified of losing everything. She'd lost the life she'd built with Carter, lost her best friend, lost her place in Miami social circles, but she'd gained something infinitely more valuable. She'd gained herself, the strength to stand up to power, the courage to choose truth over comfort, the wisdom to know that some things are worth more than money or status or reputation. She'd gained a real partner, a real family, a real life. You know what? Maya said, snuggling closer to Daniel. I didn't get revenge on Carter, but I got something better. What's that? I got free. Daniel kissed the top of her head. From the baby monitor, they heard Jackson's soft breathing, the sound of their son sleeping peacefully in the home they'd built. Outside, Miami glittered with promises of wealth and power. Inside, Maya and Daniel sat together in their small house, with their 1-year-old son and their hard-won happiness. And Maya knew, with absolute certainty, that they'd won the only battle that truly mattered. Not the fight for money or status or vindication, but the fight for truth, for love, for the right to build a life on their own terms. The penthouse was gone. The perfect marriage was gone. The golden couple was gone. But Maya Brennan was still here, stronger, wiser, and finally completely free. Maya's story proves that the truth always finds a way to surface, even when powerful people try to bury it. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Maya's position. Would you have fought back, or would you have walked away? Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's possible to rebuild after betrayal. That being broken doesn't mean staying broken. And subscribe to this channel for more real stories about people who faced impossible choices and found the strength to choose themselves. Because these aren't just stories. They're reminders that you're stronger than you think, braver than you believe, and capable of surviving anything life throws at you. See you in the next story.